Jack here, owner of Hockey Alley, bringing you back hockey history. Stories that are forgotten, stories that you remembered, or stories that you haven't heard about. And the last segment, I had Morris Lukowich, part four. We were talking about NHL arenas, the crazy arenas back in the day, and we're going to continue. Hi, Morris. How are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. The last segment we were talking about NHL arenas, the crazy arenas, and we stopped off at the Flin Flon Arena where you guys got barricaded in.
Yeah, that's it. Well, that was a junior arena. That wasn't an NHL.
No.
Flin Flon is a mining town in northern Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I think it's right kind of on the border. But to go back to NHL arenas, another arena that was a little bit different was the Buffalo, the Odd in Buffalo.
Uh-huh.
And it ended up that the visitors' dressing rooms was actually divided into two rooms.
Really?
Because there wasn't enough room to put everybody in one. So we put the defensemen in the smaller one, and the forwards changed in the bigger one. And then what happened, though, is in between period, guys would go into there, and then everybody'd have to come into the bigger one. But we'd be squeezed like sardines, sitting beside each other. And there'd be some guy standing or whatever. And for our last little pep talk before going on the ice. So that was also a little bit different, having the team dressing in two different dressing rooms.
That's unusual.
That were connected. Yeah, so that was something that was old about Buffalo. Now, one thing that was really nice about a few of the NHL arenas, and one of them was actually two that were similar, were Boston and Buffalo. They ended up having some sort of board system that really gave. There was a lot of give to it.
Yeah.
And they had some sort of a spring basis to it. And like when a guy would get hit in Boston or in Buffalo, it would sound like the boards would explode. But they would give. So there was very, very few ever concussions in those arenas, because if a player got hit hard, he got hit into the boards, but the boards had a give to it. And the boards would give, and they would actually kind of spring back. And one time there was a couple of rinks where the boards were not like that. Montreal and Toronto, the boards were cemented in. I think they could not be taken out. And oh my gosh, to hit into those boards was hard. Actually, I experienced a concussion one time in Montreal. I went after Spavoda, who was a defenseman for the Canadiens, a smaller defenseman. I did not like him for some reason. And I went to take a run at him, and if he didn't sidestep, and I kind of tripped, and I went head first into the glass. And it ended up, I concussed myself. So I remember I came off the boards, and I went to skate, and it felt like I didn't have any edges on my skate. And it was because I was kind of out cold on my feet.
Wow.
And it was interesting that time also, because those boards were so solid. And what happened was there ended up starting to be like kind of a great big, everything was kind of wavy. And then there was a black ring that started. And the black ring just started it was a small one, and it kind of just kept growing. It kept growing. And the inside of the ring would look different than the outside. So it was it was the only time it ever happened to me where with a concussion like that, where I saw this, and it lasted for about 10 minutes, and then it just sort of dissipated. But for a while, just everything was wavy in this great big black ring.
That's scary.
Which was, yeah. And so...
what about Toronto? Does the fans walk behind the players' bench? That was common, correct? In Toronto?
Yeah.
Maple Leaf Garden?
There was room. Right in behind the bench, there was a little hallway between the bench and the stands. But literally, the stands were, people were right there. And then I think people could walk in behind, and actually where the coaches were. So... But I do know that where the end of our bench was, then the fans started immediately. And so, like, our backup goaltender would quite often sit and share the popcorn of whoever the young guy was that was sitting next to our bench. Yeah,
That's fun.
so it was yeah. And then Toronto. One thing about it, Toronto had at the time there weren't any. What do you call them now? Where teams they like dedicate levels now to these boxes. So there weren't any sky boxes at that time, unless maybe way up by the press boxes. I think there weren't even there. And like that was sky boxes was a new thing that came in during that time in as new arenas came in. And it ended up though, so in Toronto, there was this one box at the end of the arena where Harold Ballard would sit.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen him in there.
Yeah, it was a little open, little window. He would sit there, and a lot of times King Clancy would be with him. And there was one time there was this guy there that the announcer went, wow. So there was a third guy there, and he says, wow, I don't know who that other third guy is. And I was watching the game at the time, and I said, I know who that is. That's Michael Gabati. And Michael was one of the owners of the Jets in the WHA. And so Michael he was visiting with Harold and was attending the game. And so the announcer didn't know who he was, but I did.
Harold Ballard, he owned the team. So people that don't know, he was the owner of the Toronto Maple Leafs for a long time.
He was. And actually, really, one of the main reasons that they haven't won the Stanley Cup since 1967. Because the Toronto Maple Leafs had a very, very, very good team that Harold Ballard basically dismantled. He dismantled it first with the trading of Lanny McDonald, who is maybe one of the all-time best leaders I've ever seen or heard about, and then also got rid of Tiger Williams. And Tiger is a guy who just gave everything. The other team was a little scared of Tiger, and they had a heck of a line there in Toronto. They had McDonald, Sittler, and Tiger Williams, and that's a line that why he would ever break up that line and possibly give away Stanley Cups in doing it.
And Tiger Williams was a tough guy, but he also was a 30-plus goal scorer one year. I think he led his team in scoring.
In Vancouver, 1 year he had a really good year in scoring. He really was a tough guy. He would do anything. I saw him taking jam and stick into guys' faces and spear guys, and I never saw him stick his stick in behind a guy's leg. I saw other guys do that. As a player would be going back to get an icing, a player could stab the defenseman in the back of the knee, and the defenseman would go crashing into the boards. I saw that done, and he never did that. So overall, he was a pretty honorable, dirty bugger.
And he was your teammate with the Kings.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
So, would you like to hear a couple Tiger stories?
Yes, I think he's. I heard that he was very funny. I never met him, but I heard that he was a funny guy.
Well, he was a very serious guy. Like he was really, really committed to winning. I feel more than just about any player that I played with, and would do anything to win. Also, so when I first came to LA, I had been put on waivers from Boston, and so it ended up that our very first practice was at our practice rink in Culver City, which was not a very good rink. And anyways, and the dressing room was a bit of a small dressing room. There was one long rectangular area, and then there was a doorway that separated then the trainer. Then there was a bathroom, and then the trainer's room. So it was almost like a almost kind of like an RV situation, about the size of that. Yeah. And so, but it had a heater at the one end, or a heater vent. So there was this vent that came down from the ceiling, and the vent was about a foot in diameter. And and it just came straight down. And so I ended up getting a seat at the very end of this rectangle. There was a couple of us there, and where I was sitting, it ended up that this furnace vent, as I was leaning over to pick up to do up my skates, there was a hole, not a very big hole, but there was a hole in this vent on one side and also on the other side. And it ended up that this the heat that was coming out of there was, or the air conditioning, depending on which we were using at the time, it was blowing right on my face. And so I asked, like, how come there's these two holes, one on this side and one on the back of this vent? And which I eventually closed up because it was actually quite a little bit distracting to have this air blowing on my face as I was doing it with my skates. So what I was told was that Tiger had written a hockey book, and actually I have it, and it is a very good book. If anybody ever wants to read a good hockey book, read it. Let me see if I've got it right here. Yeah, it's called Tiger, A Hockey Story. Probably written in about 1986 or so. It's got a picture of his face on the front where he's sweaty and he looks determined. But I got the paperback, but it ended up that this one day, I guess some boxes of books showed up, and Tiger had just finished writing the book, and it ended up that Bernie was in the dressing room before Tiger was, and he got these books. Like, he opened up these books, Bernie Nichols, and I guess he was giving these books out to everybody. And so when Tiger got there, and he looks in this box, and there's hardly any books left. Like, he blows a fuse. And I wasn't there to see this, but so I wasn't with the team yet. But it ended up, I guess, so Tiger went out to his vehicle and got his bow and arrow.
Oh my
Because
God.
he's a hunter, and he hunts with a bow. So he came back into the dressing room and was going to shoot Bernie with this bow and arrow.
Wow.
And it ended up that Bernie ended up down at this one end by the vent, and it ended up that Tiger, I guess, was asking him to apologize for giving these books out, or for and it ended up that, like, I guess Bernie was like down or attempting, like, Bernie didn't know if Tiger was serious or not. It ended up Tiger shot this bow and arrow in the dressing room.
Wow.
Yeah, the lengthwise. And it ends up he misses Bernie, but he hits this vent. So this arrow goes right through this vent. Causes a hole on one side and one on the back side. And it was the perfect size. Like, those holes, when I heard this, they were like, because I've done archery before also. And it was the perfect size, like, it was the exact size of what an arrow would be. And one without like, just one with a pointed tip, one without an arrow on the end. And so it was quite a funny story. So anyways, I took some tape and I taped that baby up, and I right then made sure that if any books showed up at that dressing room, I wasn't going to touch them.
That's crazy. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so then there was another time with Tiger that it ended up that we had a TV set in our dressing room at the farm, and it was like a regular TV, one with tubes and all that. I mean, remember, this was 1986, and we, underneath it, we had a video player. So then the games were being recorded, and we could come in between the periods, and we could, with the VCR, we could take a look at a goal, or like if the coaches wanted to use it, they could do it right there. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so this TV was right in the dressing room. Now, when guys didn't play, they had a few options. One, the player could actually go out and stand beside the boards and watch the game from there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that was a little bit cold on the feet because the ice was pretty cold right along the boards. Or a player could go sit in the stands, or the player could just stay in the dressing room. And the game was actually playing on this and recording. Mm-hmm. So a player could stay in the dressing room and just watch the game on the in-house TV. And so it depended on players. Like sometimes players would, depending on, if they just didn't want to be around anybody, they would stay in the dressing room. Or sometimes if they wanted to get close to the action but not near the fans, they'd stand near the boards. Or if a player didn't give a darn, he'd go sit in the stands, just grab a seat, because there was often some empty ones. And so this one night, we have a pretty important game against Vancouver in order to make the playoffs. And our main goalie was Rolly Melanson, and our backup goalie was Bobby Janisic. Now, Rolly was a pretty good goalie. Yeah. And and so was Bobby. I mean, they're both pretty good goalies. Rolly was probably a little bit better goalie. And it ended up that, and I think Melanson had some good years with the Islanders, perhaps. Yeah. So it ended up that we have this big game, and right like before the game, Rolly Melanson pulls the shoot. He has a headache or something like that. Mm-hmm. So he isn't going to play. So we end up putting in Bobby. And it ends up that about halfway through the third period, we're down I believe we were down 4-2. And it doesn't look good. And it ends up the Tiger gets into a fight. And I think he did it intentionally in order to see whether the team could wake up the team. Because sometimes when a team is down, that's actually the right time to fight, because then it could quite often get the team inspired and get the fighting spirit going. Yes. And anyway, so Tiger got in this one scrap. Now, I've seen Tiger in a lot of scraps, and he mostly wins them or ties them. It is not very often he loses. In this one, though, he the other guy got the better of him. And so he was not a happy camper. But he also, for some reason, got thrown out of the game. Mm-hmm. So there was about 8 minutes left in the game. And we're down 4-2. Tiger has this fight, ends up taking a couple of hard shots from whoever it was on the Canucks. But darn it all if it doesn't inspire the team. So we come back, we force the game in overtime, and we win the game in overtime. So it's actually a pretty big game for us. So we come into the dressing room, all fired up, all excited, and we come in and we look, and there's our TV, and there's no picture tube in it.
Uh-oh.
And there is glass. Jack, there is glass, little glass, everywhere.
Oh, man.
Like, everywhere. And it ended up, they had to eventually tear that carpet out of the dressing room.
Wow.
Because of just how itchy it was. And so what happens is, the story I got was that when Tiger comes in the dressing room, like, he is already steamed that he lost the fight. And another thing, he didn't really like Rolly that much. And there was a couple guys on the team Tiger didn't like. Mm-hmm. And Rolly was one that he didn't really like that much. And so it ended up that here's Rolly. So Tiger comes in. Here's Rolly sitting in front of the TV, watching the game, or he's sitting in front of the TV set, but he doesn't have the hockey game on. He's got The Price is Right.
Uh-oh.
So he's watching The Price is Right. So it ended up Rolly tells me what happens. So Rolly says he looks, and there's Tiger. And Tiger, he says there is smoke coming out of his ears. Oh. And he is standing there. And so Rolly says he stands up. And Tiger walks up and he spear chucks the TV with his hockey stick.
Wow. Man.
And Rolly says this was incredible. He says when that stick went through that TV, the TV exploded. Like just exploded. Like right in. Tiger's a stick length away, and the TV
That's funny.
blows up.
Oh man.
And then Rolly says Tiger grabs the stick and turns and swings the stick, and Rolly says it literally misses him by about an inch. Wow. Otherwise, it like takes his teeth out. So wow. Rolly jumps over this bench and starts to run, and he gets out the door. And if the farm, which is a great big circle, there's hallways that go all the way around the rink, but they're in a great big circle. So, and then there's the stands are above. So Rolly is running down this cement hallway because there's only carpets where going to and from the rink. So Rolly's running down the hallway. He's looking behind, and here's Tiger chasing him down this cement hallway. And he says the sparks are coming off his skates. Like you can see the sparks as his skates are hitting the cement.
Man.
And Tiger's yelling, I am gonna get you, if you expletive. Wow. It ends up that Rolly gets these stairs that go, they go up, they don't wind, but they scissor up to where then that's the way we would go to get to what was called the Forum Club, and that's where that's where players would go afterwards to have a drink in the arena. It was a really happening place at that time too. Oh my gosh,
yeah.
A lot of the visiting teams loved to come there, and so it was interesting how many movie stars I met in there. I got to meet who was Columbo, Peter Columbo, Peter.
What's the name? Yeah, I know who you're talking about. The one who was in Columbo, the detective guy. Yeah.
I'm just missing it. I got to meet Jan Michael Vincent there, Rod Stewart. That was very, very cool.
It was hard to get in. You had to have a special ticket to get into there.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well,
it was not easy
being
to
a
get
player.
in.
Being a player, I guess, was a special ticket. But so, it was very cool. Cool to meet Rod Stewart, and cool to meet what the heck is Peter's name? I'm embarrassed that I'm not remembering it right now. So, so it ends up, Rolly goes up these stairs, but he looks down and he can see Tiger at the bottom of the stairs looking up, yelling, I'm going to get you. I'm going to kill you.
Wow.
So it ends up the next day. So it ends up that literally it just ended up being a heck of a mess for a while because, like, even the trainer said, everybody wears shoes because there's glass in this carpet. And so it ended up being the carpet eventually got ripped out. Mm-hmm. But that night, I remember there was glass like on my clothes. Like this TV, when it blew.
Wow.
A long ways. I was surprised. Like I was a long ways away from the TV, and yet there was glass in my stall.
Man.
Like little pieces of glass and glass in my clothes. Like I had to take a wet towel and kind of wash off my clothes to get all this little glass off of it.
Yeah.
So the story isn't quite finished yet. The next day, it ends up that Rolly I sat beside Rolly. Rolly was on my right. Dave Taylor was on my left. And then Tiger was beside Dave. And like we're sitting there getting ready for a practice. And like I can tell the Tiger like is still steaming. And like I even nudged Dave and I said, hey, I think we've got to be ready to possibly break up something here. And it ended up the Tiger didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. But so here was this TV. Picture tube is gone. So it ended up about 3 or 4 days later, they rolled in another new TV. But again, it was a picture tube TV, but it was like a little bit bigger screen. And Pat Quinn was our coach at the time. It ended up that Phil Sykes, who was one of our really best penalty killers, and he was from, I think, Fargo, North Dakota. And he had a really good sense of humor, Phil. He could always find the sort of the oddity in anything, and make it humorous. Ends up. So there's this TV, and we're looking at it. Wow, it looks so nice. Phil walks in, and he has got this great big piece of paper, and he tapes it over the TV. And what's on it is a bullseye. He's drawn a bullseye. So when Pat came in to sort of give a talk about the practice, Pat looked over. He even laughed. And it wasn't that often that, like, Pat was a pretty serious guy when it came to the hockey type, and he had a chuckle even about that one. So, anyways,
I gotta ask you. I saw Tiger Williams in practice. He was the only guy without a helmet, and he was the roughest guy out there. Was that every practice like that with him?
Yeah. He played a practice like a game.
And he was intense. I mean, he was hitting guys hard. And that was just normal then. I saw one practice.
that was normal. Like, because we ever scrimmaged or whatever, he would hit guys clean, but he made sure to finish guys, and like he was being an example of how we had to play in the games.
Wow.
And the thing is, it was it was tough. Guys I know that some players used to dislike it. Like Marcel used to get pissed off, and give Tiger hell and tell him, hey, you got to lighten up a little bit in practice here, and save it for the games.
What about Pat Quinn? How was it to play for Pat Quinn? Pat Quinn was the one that was also Vancouver's coach when they went to the finals, if people don't know.
Oh, okay. You know what? I love Pat Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, when I first came to Boston, I'd been put on waivers. Like, there's a story about how my sticks hadn't shown up or hadn't been ordered in Boston, and I ended up having to try and Ray Borks and Michael Taleens, and then so when I got to LA, I had lost my confidence, and Pat, though, he gave me an opportunity to get my confidence back, and for a while I played some real good hockey for him. Now, what was cool was in my last year in the NHL, which was 86, 87, we ended up getting 3 very good rookies that year. We got Luke Robitaille, who was, I believe, a 9th-round draft pick. And we got Jimmy Carson, who I believe was a 1st-round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
And Jimmy was born in Detroit. And it ended up we got a walk-on from Labrador. And that was Steve Duchesne, who ended up playing 18 years in the NHL, I believe, as a defenseman.
And he was an all-star, too, I think.
And he was an all-star. Yeah. So here we had Robitaille, who in his first 8 years of being an LA King, the fewest number of goals he ever scored was 44. It's amazing. He never scored less than 44 goals in his first 8 years and then got traded. Like, what does a guy have to do?
He was he had quick hands in front of the net. He was just fast, from what I heard, and would scoring.
He had one of the quickest wrist shots. Him and Mike Bossy, quickest wrist shots of 2 guys I've ever seen before. And Luke had a hunger around the net. And you know what? He got drafted really low, I believe, a 9th-round draft pick.
Yeah.
Because they said he wasn't a very good skater. And yet, if there was ever a loose puck, and there was a race between him and a defenseman, Luke always got there.
So he can skate. So what they were saying, I mean, the critics were wrong.
The critics were wrong. Robitaille was actually a pretty good skater. Not so much through the neutral zone. Yet if there was a loose puck, he had the ability to get to that puck, maybe lift the defenseman's stick. Like he had the ability to win a lot of battles. And then around the net, he just was amazing.
Yeah.
With his wrist shot. Very, very quick wrist shot. And just going to so with Pat, to come back to Pat, actually with Robitaille, I'd love to tell a story about how he taught me how to shoot a wrist shot. I may have already done that in another series, but with Pat, it ended up that going into this season where we had these young guys, he came to me and he said, Morris, you know what, I would like you to do something for me. And I said, what's that? He said, you know what, I'm going to have Marcel mentor Robitaille, and they're going to play on a line together. what I'd like you to do is I would like you to mentor Jimmy Carson, and I'm going to put you on a line and with him. And he says, what I'd like you to do is to teach him about defensive hockey. He said he's got amazing offensive skills, but he doesn't care even an iota about defensive hockey. And so he says, I want you to work with him on this, so that he can, so when we're on the ice, it's not a liability. And actually, it was hard to say who cared less about defense, him or Robitaille. Neither guy really gave a damn. They just loved to score goals, both of them, these two young guys. But so it ended up that what Jimmy and I finally came to an agreement on was that in our own end, as often as possible, I would go back and play with the defenseman down low, because I was a pretty good defensive player and I was quick down there. And then he would cover the point guy. And then it was amazing. After a little bit, Jimmy said, you know what? He says, that's not really my job to be down there. And then so it ended up that I said, well, okay, but it's going to be the centerman works harder than anybody else out here. And so, like, are you ready for it? And he said, yeah. And so it ended up that he ended up and went back and played down low, and I went back to my point spot.
Wow.
And what was very, very cool was when Pat left us, right at New Year's, that would have been the end of '86, the start of '87, when he took the Vancouver coach GM position, and he couldn't, and we lost him as our guy. Was that he? Jimmy and I were the top plus-minus players on the team. I was really proud about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. Robitaille, I played with him at Burbank in a pickup game, and I remember that he was very good with his feet, catching pucks off his skates, which was pretty amazing. Did you ever see him do that?
Oh, yeah, lots.
Yeah.
He was very good that way. Now, the thing is, he did not have blistering speed. I mean, there's other guys that were really fast, like Jimmy Fox was fast.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, even though Robitaille had a bit of a sort of his heels really came up high when he skated. So it looked like a choppy skating stride, yet he really he got the job done. He was very good that way. Anyways, Jackie, I think it's time today, and but I'd love to do another one and just tell a little bit about Robitaille, tell a little bit more about Tiger.
Lots of stories.
Yeah. So you want to do another one again?
Yes, absolutely.
By the way, these are all going to be in my book, which I hope is going to be out come fall. And you know what? I still remember that moment when Phil Sykes taped that bullseye up on the TV. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like even Tiger, as mad as he was that day, got a bit of a chuckle out of it. It was sort of loosened him up for a second.
That's awesome. I didn't know that happened. It's an awesome story. Yeah, and we'd love to do more if you're up to it. I'd love to do another segment for sure.
Let's look at next Sunday.
You got it, Morris. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the great stories.
You're welcome.
You got it, buddy. Have a great day.
See ya.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.